Elena Rodriguez stepped off the military transport truck into the scorching heat of Fort Braxton's training grounds. The dust kicked up by her boots settled slowly in the still air as she looked around at the sprawling complex of buildings, shooting ranges and obstacle courses that would be her home for the next 12 weeks. She was 22 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, with steady hands and sharp eyes that had earned her top marks in basic training. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her uniform was crisp and clean. Everything about her appearance suggested discipline and focus. But Elena carried a secret burden that none of her instructors knew about. During her final marksmanship test in basic training, she had missed a crucial shot under pressure. The target had been clear, the conditions perfect, but when the moment came to fire, her hands had trembled just enough to send the bullet wide of its mark. She had passed the test anyway, thanks to her excellent performance on all the other exercises. But that single missed shot haunted her thoughts and made her question whether she truly belonged in sniper school. The other recruits in her class were impressive. Most were men with years of hunting experience or previous military service. They talked confidently about their shooting achievements and swapped stories about difficult shots they had made in challenging conditions. Elena listened quietly, saying little about her own background. When asked about her experience, she would simply say that she had always been good with rifles and leave it at that. She didn't mention the missed shot or her private doubts about her abilities. Sniper school was unlike anything she had experienced before. The physical demands were extreme, but the mental pressure was even greater. Every shot was analyzed, every decision questioned, every moment of hesitation noted by the instructors. The program was led by Master Sergeant Mike Torres, a veteran sniper with 15 years of combat experience. He was known for his tough standards and his ability to spot weakness in recruits before they even knew it existed. From the first day, Torres pushed the class hard. Long-distance shooting exercises, camouflage training, stalking drills, and endless hours of studying ballistics and wind patterns. The recruits learned to calculate bullet drop, compensate for wind drift, and remain perfectly still for hours at a time. Elena excelled at most of the technical aspects. She could calculate distances quickly, understand wind patterns better than most of her classmates, and remain motionless for longer periods than anyone else in her group. But when it came to the actual shooting, especially under pressure, something held her back. During the first major shooting test, she performed well on the practice rounds. Her shots were accurate and consistent when she had time to prepare and think through each decision. But when Torres introduced time pressure and stress scenarios, her performance began to suffer. Rodriguez. Torres called out after a particularly challenging exercise where Elena had missed 2 out of 5 targets. What happened out there? Elena stood at attention, her face flushed with embarrassment. No excuse, Sergeant. I'll do better next time. Torres studied her carefully. You've got the skills, Rodriguez. I can see that in your practice sessions. But something's getting in your head during the real tests. Figure it out or you won't make it through this program. The other recruits began to notice Elena's struggles. During meal times and evening downtime, she could hear whispered conversations about who was likely to wash out of the program. Her name came up more often than she liked. She's got the technical knowledge, one recruit said quietly, but she freezes up when it counts. Sniper school isn't just about being smart, another replied. You need ice in your veins when the pressure's on. Elena tried to ignore the comments, but they added to the weight she already carried. Every night, she would lie in her bunk and replay that missed shot from basic training, wondering if it had revealed some fundamental flaw in her character. The weeks passed and the class gradually got smaller. Recruits who couldn't handle the physical demands were sent back to their regular units. Others left when they couldn't master the technical skills. Elena remained, but just barely. Her shooting performance continued to be inconsistent. Some days she would perform brilliantly, hitting targets at extreme distances with remarkable precision. Other days, especially during timed exercises or simulated combat scenarios, she would miss shots that should have been routine. Torres kept a close eye on her progress. During one-on-one training sessions, he tried different approaches to help her overcome whatever was blocking her performance. Tell me about your first miss, he said one afternoon as they sat in the shade between exercises. Elena hesitated. She had never talked to anyone about that moment in basic training. It was during my final marksmanship test. Clear conditions, stationary target at 300 meters. Should have been an easy shot. What happened? I lined up perfectly, controlled my breathing, squeezed the trigger smoothly. But right at the moment of firing, I started thinking about what would happen if I missed. The thought distracted me just enough to throw off my aim. Torres nodded thoughtfully. Overthinking. It's one of the most common problems for new snipers. You get so focused on the consequences of missing that you create the very problem you're trying to avoid. How do I fix it? By learning to trust your training and stop trying to control every variable. The shot happens in an instant. You can't think your way through it. Elena understood what Torres was saying intellectually, but applying it in practice proved difficult. The pressure of sniper school was intense, and every shot felt like it could determine her future in the military. As the program entered its final phase, Elena's position became precarious. She was ranked near the bottom of the remaining recruits, and several instructors questioned whether she should be allowed to continue. She's got potential, Torres argued during a staff meeting, but she needs more time to develop confidence under pressure. Time is what we don't have, replied Captain Johnson, the program director. We're training snipers for real-world missions. They need to perform when it matters, not when they're ready. Elena sensed that her time was running out. The final qualification exercise was scheduled for the following week, and she knew that anything less than outstanding performance would result in her dismissal from the program. The night before the final test, she sat alone on the steps of the barracks, looking up at the clear night sky. The other recruits were inside, some sleeping, others nervously reviewing their notes one last time. Elena thought about all the reasons she had wanted to become a sniper. It wasn't about the prestige or the challenge. She genuinely believed that precision shooting could save lives in combat situations. A single well-placed shot could end a threat without putting other soldiers at risk. But believing in the mission wasn't enough if she couldn't perform when it mattered most. The final qualification exercise began at dawn. The remaining 12 recruits were given a series of increasingly difficult shooting scenarios, each designed to test different aspects of sniper skills. The first few exercises went well for Elena. She hit targets at 400, 600, and 800 meters with consistent accuracy. Her confidence began to build as she fell into the rhythm of her training. But then came the final challenge, a simulated combat scenario where recruits had to identify and engage multiple targets while under time pressure and simulated enemy fire. Elena took her position and began scanning the range through her scope. The targets were partially concealed and positioned at various distances. She had to identify which targets represented genuine threats and engage them in order of priority. She spotted the first target quickly and lined up her shot. But as she prepared to fire, she could hear the simulated gunfire around her and feel the pressure of the instructors watching her performance. The familiar doubt crept into her mind. What if she missed? What if this shot determined whether she passed or failed? What if all her training had been wasted because she couldn't perform under pressure? The thoughts raced through her head as she tried to focus on the target. Her breathing became slightly irregular, and she could feel tension building in her shoulders. Then she remembered Torres' advice. Stop trying to control every variable and trust her training. Elena forced herself to take a slow, deep breath and clear her mind of everything except the target in her crosshairs. She let her training take over, following the mechanical process she had practiced thousands of times. Steady position. Sight alignment. Breathing control. Trigger squeeze. The rifle fired, and through her scope she saw the target fall. She quickly shifted to the second target, then the third, working through the scenario with growing confidence. When the exercise ended, Elena realized that she had successfully engaged all 5 targets within the time limit. For the first time in weeks, she felt truly confident about her performance. Torres approached her as she secured her weapon. "How did that feel, Rodriguez?" "Different," she replied honestly. "I stopped thinking about missing and just focused on shooting. That's the breakthrough we've been waiting for." The results were announced that afternoon. Elena had finished in the top third of her class and would graduate from sniper school with full qualifications. The relief was overwhelming, but more important than passing the program was the knowledge that she had finally overcome the mental barrier that had been holding her back. 6 months later, Elena found herself deployed to a forward operating base in a conflict zone overseas. Her unit was providing overwatch for a series of diplomatic meetings between military commanders and local leaders. The base was located in a valley surrounded by hills that provided excellent vantage points for surveillance. Elena and her spotter, Corporal Davis, were positioned on a ridge approximately 1,200 meters from the main compound where the meetings were taking place. Their job was to monitor the surrounding area for potential threats and provide early warning if hostile forces approached the base. It was routine security work, but Elena understood the importance of maintaining vigilance. On the third day of the diplomatic meetings, Elena noticed unusual movement in a cluster of buildings about 800 meters from the compound. Through her scope, she could see several figures moving between the structures in a way that seemed coordinated and purposeful. "Davis, take a look at those buildings at 2 o'clock, she said quietly. Davis used his binoculars to scan the area. "I see them. 3, maybe 4 individuals. They're definitely watching the compound." Elena continued to observe the suspects through her rifle scope. One of them was carrying what appeared to be a long, cylindrical object that could be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. "This doesn't look right," she told Davis. "I think we should report it." Davis radioed their observations to the command post, and within minutes, they received orders to maintain surveillance while a security team investigated. But before the security team could reach the suspected position, Elena saw one of the figures move to a window overlooking the compound. Through her scope, she could see him raising what was definitely an RPG launcher toward the main building where the diplomatic meeting was taking place. At that exact moment, she spotted a familiar figure walking across the compound's courtyard. It was General Morrison, the senior American commander who was leading the diplomatic negotiations. He was moving directly into the line of fire, apparently unaware of the threat developing in the distance. Elena had perhaps 3 seconds to make a decision. The man with the RPG was preparing to fire, and there was no time to warn the general or wait for backup. This was the moment every sniper trains for but hopes never to face, a split-second decision where hesitation could cost lives. Elena felt the familiar pressure building as she lined up the shot. The target was partially concealed, the distance was significant, and there was a slight crosswind that would affect bullet trajectory. Under normal circumstances, she would take time to calculate all the variables and ensure perfect conditions. But these weren't normal circumstances. For an instant, Elena felt the old doubts creeping back. What if she missed? What if the shot revealed their position and put Davis at risk? What if she was wrong about the threat? Then she remembered her training and Tora's advice. Trust your skills and don't overthink the shot. Elena took a deep breath, steadied her position, and focused entirely on the target in her crosshairs. Everything else, the pressure, the consequences, the doubts, faded away until there was nothing but the sight picture and the trigger beneath her finger. She fired. The bullet traveled the 800 meters in just over a second. Through her scope, Elena saw the man with the RPG launcher collapse, the weapon falling from his hands and used. Immediately, the compound's security forces went into high alert. The remaining suspects in the building were quickly surrounded and captured. Investigation revealed that they were part of a planned attack designed to kill or capture the American general and disrupt the peace negotiations. Elena's single shot had prevented what could have been a disaster for both the diplomatic mission and American forces in the region. Later that evening, General Morrison personally visited Elena's position to thank her for her actions. "Sergeant Rodriguez," he said, "I understand that you identified the threat and took immediate action to neutralize it. Your quick thinking and precise shooting may have saved not just my life, but the entire peace process we've been working toward." Elena stood at attention, still processing what had happened. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No," the general replied, "you did much more than that. You made a split-second decision under enormous pressure and executed it flawlessly. That's the mark of an exceptional soldier." Word of Elena's actions spread quickly through military channels. The woman who had struggled to pass sniper school became known as the soldier who saved a general with a single perfect shot. But for Elena, the most important outcome wasn't the recognition or the commendations that followed. It was the knowledge that she had finally overcome the mental barriers that had once held her back. The missed shot in basic training that had haunted her for so long now seemed like a necessary part of her journey. Without that early failure, she might never have developed the humility and determination that ultimately made her a better sniper. When she returned home months later, Elena was assigned to train new recruits at sniper school. Torres, now promoted to sergeant major, welcomed her back with a knowing smile. "I heard about what happened over there," he said. "Sounds like you figured out how to trust your training." Elena nodded. "It took a while, but I learned that the shot happens in an instant. You can't think your way through it." As an instructor, Elena shared her story with struggling recruits, especially those who seemed to have the technical skills but lacked confidence under pressure. She taught them that failure isn't the end of the story, it's often the beginning of real understanding. "I failed at sniper school," she would tell her students. "Not officially, but I failed to perform when it mattered most." The difference between failure and success isn't about never missing a shot. It's about learning from your misses and trusting yourself when the moment comes. Years later, Elena's shot at the compound was studied in military academies as an example of precision shooting under extreme pressure. But she always emphasized that the technical aspects of the shot were less important than the mental preparation that made it possible. The woman who had once doubted her abilities became one of the military's most respected marksmanship instructors. Her students went on to serve with distinction in conflicts around the world, carrying with them the lessons she had learned through her own struggles and eventual triumph. Elena's story became a reminder that sometimes our greatest strengths emerge from our deepest doubts. The shot that saved a general was possible only because of the missed shot that had taught her humility and determination. In the end, sniper school hadn't just taught her to shoot accurately. It had taught her to trust herself when everything depended on a single moment of perfect execution. And when that moment came, she was ready.